is the A to Z podcast. Expert insights on leadership, business, real estate, investing, and growth.
Welcome to the podcast. Today, we're going to talk about how to scale your company and also how to become a purpose-oriented leader who leverages culture. To talk about all of this and more, I invited someone who knows how to do these things. He is Nick Friedman. He is co-founder and also the president of a national franchise company. He's also a bestseller and purpose-driven leader. Nick, welcome to the podcast, and thank you for carving out time and being here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, I want to take us back to when it all started. If you have any earliest memories, can you take us back to you, Omar, your best friend and co-founder, and the van?
Yes. So, I was never brought up to start a business. I was taught to follow them our traditional path, work hard in school, get a degree, get a job, which was great advice from my parents and teachers. But the summer before my senior year of college, I just was very unfulfilled thinking about my future. And my business partner, my best friend at the time, his mom had a beat up cargo van from her furniture store. And she said, why don't you guys go borrow the van and you can move people's furniture, you can haul people's junk away. And then she looked us up and down and said, you guys could be College H.U.N.K.S hauling junk. And we just thought that was a catchy name. We thought it was a funny way to make the phone ring. But we realized that people had a need for the service and they thought the name was catchy. So that was enough for me to say, I'll finish college, of course, but I actually want to make this business a year-round venture. And I always tell the story in those early days, we were doing all the work ourselves and we were answering the phones. We were driving the truck. We were hauling the junk. And we bought a 1-800 number because we wanted to make ourselves look like a big national business, but it was routed still to our cell phones. So people would call to complain about driving, and I'd be in the driver's seat, apologize, and say, we'll fire those guys when they exit the office. Probably fired ourselves 3 or 4 times that first summer. And, started to burn out. That's when we ultimately learned, hey, if we're going to have another truck, let alone another location, we've got to learn how to scale, how to build processes and systems and bring good people into the organization.
What a nice start. I wish someone gave me an idea when I was in college because I didn't have any idea about how to do business. And you guys were very lucky. Someone encouraged you and pushed you in the direction. Look at where you are today, creating a lot of jobs and opportunities for so many people. And I like you being honest, how you started it all. You were the one actually picking the phone and all of these stories, because some people, they wait until that perfect time to launch a business. I want to also take you back to when you first decided, you know what, we're going to franchise. We're going to go national. Do you remember some of the fears or surprises that you have when you decided to go franchise?
Yes, I can tell you, I didn't really know what the word franchising was until we read a book. It was called The E-Myth Revisited by a guy named Michael Gerber. And in that book, it talks about creating systems and processes so that your business can scale. And he uses the example of a franchise concept as a way to replicate yourself, replicate your business. And so the buzzword started sticking in my head. And of course, I had heard about McDonald's and all the fast food franchises that you think of, but I didn't realize that there's franchising in all sorts of other different industries, home services, retail, consulting, and everything else in between. And so I would say I probably had a little bit of a naive view, almost glamorized, of what it was going to be. It sounded easy. It was anything but easy. Really nothing, I would say, in business is ever easy, but it made sense for us as to how we would expand our business. We were very ambitious. We wanted and could see our brand in other cities, in other states. And we said, well, we don't have the money to go do it ourselves. We don't have the people to deploy into these markets. So if we can create a systemized business process that we can teach other people how to operate and utilize our best practices and our brand and everything else that has proven itself for us to work, then it could be a viable way to expand the brand. And I'll say the early failures in franchising was not realizing how much money and effort it actually takes to build a successful franchise company. We had to develop all the training materials. We had to hire all the legal team. We were probably selling franchises to not everybody that we should have. I mean, to people that we probably shouldn't have been, I should say. Some people that maybe weren't a perfect culture fit or values fit, but they were willing to write a check. We needed the money because we were trying to build the infrastructure to support more franchises. And so I think we were undercapitalized, even though franchising in and of itself was somewhat of a capitalization strategy. But it ultimately, I call ourselves a 20-year overnight success because it ultimately took that long for us to really reach the other side and feel like we're, at scale.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. People sometimes, when they think about scaling, they only see one option. I need capital, or I need a partner, or I need a team to scale. But in your case, you have that opportunity that you picked, which is franchising. The fact that you ventured, even if you didn't know anything, that encourages everyone. You don't need to know everything, A to Z, to start something. I will come back again to dive deep. Maybe you can share with us some of the lessons that you learned. You already mentioned about you shouldn't have chosen some people to join and so on. So I want to ask you more questions about that. I'll come back. But before we move on to the main discussion points, I want to take you also back again, that moment where you were pitching on Shark Tank, and the moment you got a deal which didn't align, you pivoted and you said no. Think about this. A lot of people don't have the opportunity to be in front of the sharks. Few get opportunities and deals. You got all of these, but you said no. Looking back, what was going on in your mind? And also looking back, do you regret for saying no?
Yeah, so we were actually kind of a claim to fame. We were on the very first episode of the very first season of Shark Tank. So we didn't know the Sharks were when we went into it, do the pitch. We actually didn't know that this show would become a huge success and they would go on to become really television celebrities for the most part. And so we went on to pitch our business and to ask for some investment. And we got an offer from Robert Herjavec. He made an offer. But at the time, once that offer was kind of put in front of us, he was asking, I think, for 10% of the business of College H.U.N.K.S, and he was going to give us $250,000. So it was a fair offer given where we were in our business at that time. It was a lot of money, especially back then for us. And I think at that time, something in the pit of our stomach said we shouldn't give up equity. We don't need another partner. And so, they don't give you a lot of time to make a decision because they're filming in a television studio. So it's you're moving quickly, and it felt like I was in a boxing match because I was getting yelled at by Mr. Wonderful. And so we had to make a snap decision, and ultimately I think it was the right decision. You could always question if you would have done it differently. Maybe if we had gone in a later season and knew who the Sharks were, we might have been more eager to take a deal with them because we, would have known what kind of sort of media platform they had built for themselves by that point. But when we went on the show, it was, like I said, episode 1, season 1. So we was almost like going into it completely blind. And so I really can't regret the decision we made. And ultimately, our business is probably worth 100 times what that valuation was back then. And so it would have been financially not a great decision unless, maybe they would have made it worth 1,000 times, but I don't think so.
Yeah, two things I like from the story that you shared. The first one is the decision to say that, what, down in our gut, we have to follow our gut and we don't want to give equity. Sometimes when I talk to startups, they rush giving equity because they are desperate in getting capital. And I always encourage them, try everything possible first to find money through debt or maybe from friends, colleagues, and also build system. Have your team try everything by your own resources before you go out to give equity, because if you want to take it public down the road, you need more equity. And your decision at that time, without even knowing the details to make that smart decision, shows the importance of startups to think twice. And of course, I like the idea that you said you didn't know if you chose that path. Maybe it's a different story. Maybe you may not be here, or maybe 10 times, 100 times. But in life, we cannot really regret looking back and say, I should have chosen that path. You didn't know whether that would have worked or not.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times, I mean, that's how I try to think about it. I use a lot of analogies with sports, right? I mean, you learn from what feels like a failure or feels like a mistake,
Yeah.
and you celebrate the victories, but you don't get too, hung up on them. And you want to be just sort of focus on the next step in front of you. And I think, to your point, when some things happen, especially when they're out of your control, it's very easy to get narrow focused and worried about what that means. But long term, which is really how you should be thinking about when you're in business, it's a long journey. We don't know. Good news, bad news, we don't know what the ultimate outcome will be. And actually, another example I'll share is when we started our business, when we started franchising our business, was right around 2008, 2009. And so if you were going to pick a time in history to start franchising a home service business, that was right as the housing market was crashing. And so it was like all of a sudden the wind was right in our face. And again, at the time I was, frustrated. Oh, this economy, this housing market, it's impacting our business. But I think I really should say, I know it's one of the best things that had happened to us, because we were able to A, survive it, B, become more resilient. It really exercised our grittiness, our resourcefulness, and we had to figure it out. And I think if you can figure it out when there's headwinds, you can really celebrate and win when the wind is at your backs. But I think a lot of people get sort of lulled into a false sense of invincibility when everybody's winning. And all of a sudden, when the wind changes, I think it was Warren Buffett said, when the tide goes out, you see who's been swimming naked. And so you've got to have that foundation. You got to keep your covers on.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, the idea that having this kind of business when the home industry crashed is, if you think about it, that was bad luck. But I love your attitude and mentality, which is don't time the market. Just whenever you have an idea, just go out. Even if it becomes bad, like you did, you learn, you become resilient. And if you succeeded in that kind of bad market, you can imagine how much you can thrive in better market. And it made you really very, very resilient. And I'm glad you survived that. Let's talk about your franchise, because one of the questions I get from small businesses is they want to scale like you did. And one of the struggles that they have is they don't have a framework on how to scale. Now, initially, you didn't have a framework, but once you passed through it and once you succeeded, I'm sure you may have some ideas. If you were starting it now from scratch, I believe that you have a framework, what you should do to succeed in your franchise. Would you mind to share what it was like for you, for example, when you initially franchised and the setbacks you experienced, and how did you overcome those challenges?
Yes, I would say the biggest challenge was the learning curve, because we were no longer in the moving and junk removal business. We were now all of a sudden in the franchise business. So we needed to learn how to support and sell franchises. We needed to learn how to collect royalties, register in all the different registration states. And so I think that learning curve was just a very big smack in the face for us, because we were already burning ourselves out on the moving and hauling business. And then we thought, okay, well, franchise, that'll help us scale it. And I keep coming back to this naive thought of mine, it'll be easier. And it was definitely anything but easier. So we were building the plane in flight is what it kind of felt like, which I think is part of being an entrepreneur in general is, we started the business, we were figuring it out. A lot of the tools that exist now to get businesses started, we didn't have those tools, right? We didn't have AI, chat GPT. We didn't have, we didn't even have social media or pay-per-click internet marketing vendors back then. So we had to kind of figure all that stuff out on our own. And then we decided to start franchising. Thankfully, there was some framework about how to franchise through the International Franchise Association, which still provides great resources to both franchisors and franchisees. And so we utilize those frameworks and put them into practice. But I would say the biggest learning curve was just trying to figure it all out, understand what this franchising business model really meant. And hiring, we couldn't afford to hire really experienced people, so we had to hire kind of more junior people and hope that they were going to, be talented enough to get it done, which I think does come down to a talent recognition, and talent acquisition and retention is very much a critical part when it comes to business.
So, from what you're telling me, that the most important thing in franchising or any scaling is creating systems and processes. Right now, I'm assuming that if you are onboarding a franchisee, you could be able to quickly onboard them and launch them into success. Would you expand on that one, like the importance of creating systems and processes
Oh, yeah.
and onboarding people in franchise environment?
Absolutely. I mean, look, the system and process for business is everything. I mean, you think about a pilot who's flying a plane, he goes through his checklists every time before he starts to fly that plane. The same should be held true for any task when it comes to business. And of course, those systems and processes are not a static event. Not something you just create once and then set it, forget it, and leave it. It's ever evolving. Again, we had to create all those things on our own. We didn't really have the money to hire consultants. We didn't, have AI that could, create the initial draft of the checklist. But what we did do is when we read that book, The E-Myth, and realized we need to start documenting how we do everything, we literally went to work every day and started writing down how we drove the truck, how we answered the phone, how we loaded the furniture, how we greeted the clients, how we wore the uniform. And that allowed us, when we started making our first employee hires, to train people how to do the things that we were doing and replace ourselves. We call it delegate and elevate. Eventually, we were able to hire people that also helped improve and develop those systems upon systems. And ultimately, to your point, in a franchise concept, we're having to teach somebody who's never been in business before, or at least never been in this business before, how to hire and train and operate a successful business in this industry. So we have a slogan. We say, if you're not training, you're not gaining. We like to say you got to coach in the locker room and on the field. You got to do, game tape review. So everything boils back to training and preparation, right? There's no football team or basketball team in the world that could go out and just try to play without any practice, without any playbook, without any coaching. And I think the same holds true with any business model. If you've got a business model, the market has to show that there's some value to it, that they like what it is you're offering. And then you got to continue to create systems around it and attract great people around it to, build and execute those systems as well. So a critical part of our business. I think once we made that realization, we were no longer, running around with our hair on fire. Still, sometimes it felt like that. But then it was like, okay, well, what system is missing? What tool is missing? What resource is missing that would, make this a little bit easier than what it is right now?
Even if somebody is not choosing franchise as a model to pursue and scale their company, wherever they are and whatever method they follow, this is really very critical what you're saying, which is the founders recording everything they do, everything they know. And once they have the ability to hire someone, mentor that person, and to have documentations, because one of the things I advise small businesses who are trying to raise capital or sell their companies is your valuation could quadruple at least double if you could show the investors and the buyers that your company is independent of you. And one of the ways to make your company independent is to create these systems, put them in place. If something happens to you, someone will pick up a company and take it to the next level. And the scaling without doing that is really useless, because you won't get high valuation. Even if you scale, you don't have foundation, it's going to crumble. If something happens to the founders, everything is to the drain. In that process, by the way, were you recording just in documentation, in writing, or in video? At this point, what kind of approach are you following? For example, somebody just decided to join your franchise. Do you have a system which requires little involvement from your team for them to go through kind of course or
Yeah.
onboarding something?
Yes. So for new hires and new franchise owners, we kind of have a whole onboarding process. Some of it is going to be orientation to the history, the vision, the values, the brand promise, the service philosophy, really what I'll call the foundational elements of our business and our brand, what separates us from other companies out there. And from there, we begin on the technical side of training. So if it's somebody who's going to be on the trucks, it's the technical side of driving safety, of loading, of soft skill interacting in sales in the home. If it's somebody who's going to be on our phone, it's the software system, or how do they answer the phone and convert the sale. If it's a franchise owner, we're teaching them the whole A to Z playbook of running a business in a local market. So truck acquisition, insurance vendors, warehouse selection, hiring their first key employees, training their first key employees, getting their first lead, converting their first lead into a sale, performing the job. So all of that stuff is mapped out. We have it in various different modules, from checklists to workshops to video tutorials to live or virtual interactions and engagements. So I think there's a significant amount that has gone into it. We're actually releasing a new, what we're calling H.U.N.K.S way process in the next quarter, something we've been working on for almost over a year. So when I say it's, training and systems is not something we did, it's something we do. And I think that's got to be the mindset for every business owner as well.
I love it. This should be a continuous process, because you don't want to say, okay, we trained enough, we have onboarding system, we have everything, we don't need to update it. But it has to be an ongoing, and
that becomes cultural within the organization. Because if it's, to your point, what you said a couple moments before, if it's all dependent on me, the entrepreneur, the founder, then the business, even just the training systems, are still reliant on me. But if I can create systems, if I can create processes where my team members understand how to improve and develop and upgrade the systems and processes, then the business can continue to improve and flourish, not just stay, static and not go backwards, but it can move forwards without me. And I think that's the most powerful, thing to create a value for a business if you're going to sell it, for example.
Yep.
The other thing, I think one of my mentors told me early on in our business, and it really stuck with me. I actually haven't tested this yet, but I believe it would hold true. They said the mark of a great business is one that the founder could go away for a year and come back, and it's more profitable and better performing than when he or she left it. It sounds very aspirational. Sounds like, whether you call it a pipe dream or nirvana or whatever you want to call it. I haven't tested it out. But I do believe that our business would be that. And again, that doesn't happen overnight. It happens with intentionality, getting great people, curating the systems initially and the processes initially, and then continuing to enhance and evolve those.
So let me probe you. I'm sure taking 1 year off may be a little bit challenging initially, but I'm assuming that, you can correct me, I'm assuming that when you go on vacation, let's say for 2 weeks or 1 week or 1 month, Have you tested that? You turn it off
Yeah,
everything, you delegated someone and nothing went wrong. You came back, actually things worked well, even if you were not there. When you came, even who's that guy? They were like they didn't even recognize who was that guy.
that's right.
Because they were so good in handling the system that you created. Did you have any kind of experience like that?
Yeah, actually, the first time I turned my phone off for any extended period of time was actually 12 years ago. So we would have been about 8 years into our business. Uh, I had just gotten married and I was going on my honeymoon, and I told myself that I was going to go completely off the radar. And of course, I warned everybody in advance. I said, I'm going away for, I think it was 10 days. I said, anything that's urgent, talk to this person, talk to this person, talk to my business partner, talk to my assistant. I said, but I'm not going to be able to fix any issues in these next 10 days. I'll say for the first couple of days, it felt almost like I was having withdrawal. Like my hands were shaking. I wanted to go reach for my phone. By the end, I was in such a calm, Zen-like state. Came back. The business was incredible. I will say that jumping back, reintegrating into technology after that and into the business was a bit of an adjustment as well. It was a bit of a shock, like I'll call it reentry shock, where all of a sudden I was on my computer, on my laptop, on my iPad, all at the same time, trying to, see what did I miss? What did I miss? I was having like FOMO, fear of missing out. But yeah, that was a time where we tested it and it proved to work.
I mean, what a freedom, knowing that nothing broke. You were away for 10 days and nothing broke, and the confidence it builds. And I'm sure I want to learn whether you took a challenge, the challenge of your mentor to go away for 1 year. I want to know what happened. At
Yeah,
least we can take that as a case study, because it's powerful. Think about it. At the end of the day, you're going to walk away, whether it's retirement or selling it or taking it public, and you stay with the board and somebody will be the president and the CEO. But you can test it before then. And
mm-hmm.
what a great way to do it earlier so that you can adjust. Think about those CEOs who return it back, whether this is the CEO of Starbucks and many other CEOs. They retire, and after like a couple of years, things go bad, the culture couldn't stick, and they come back again from
Yeah,
retirement. And if you test it ahead of time, 1 year, hands off, if everything goes, now you can actually use that to sell to the buyers, or
that's true.
if you want to take it public, for example, you could say, you know what, this company is so strong, built out of us, our control, it could be able to succeed without us. And I want to hear more. Now, I want to talk about culture, because I consider your company a purpose-driven company which has a distinct and unique culture. And you already have system, which I would say the backbone. And the software of that backbone, or the hardware, is the culture. Sometimes companies may have the system, the hardware, they have the background, the backbone, but they may not have the software, which is the culture part, and they don't leverage the system. In your case, if you take us back, how you decided what kind of culture you want to have, and most importantly, which I want to know, is how did you create that culture and nurtured it?
Yeah. Oh, fantastic question. Something I'm very passionate about, obviously. We started reading a lot of books when we started business. Before being in business, there wasn't a lot that got me excited about, but once I started the business, I would read books, go to conferences, and always try to bring back some of those ideas and inject them into my company. And something I heard very early on was the importance of a company culture. And I think it was my business partner said, a company without a culture is like a picture frame. Could be a beautiful picture frame, but there's no picture in it. So your brand is your external presence, or the way you're perceived in the public, but the culture is really the internal brand. And the way, in my view, you define and create culture is by having a company purpose and a set of core values that define the behaviors that you want to be valued and celebrated within the organization. So we went through several books, Simon Sinek, Start With Why, Good to Great by Jim Collins, and we kind of developed the foundational framework for our company culture that we wanted it to be. We said our company purpose is to move the world. it's a double meaning. Obviously, we move people's physically furniture, but we also want to move people emotionally through our daily interactions with our team, with our franchise owners, with our clients, and see what little impacts we can do that can add up to very big, significant impacts over time. And then we came up with 4 core values. And we like to say with our core values, it's what's in the halls, not what's on the walls. So it doesn't matter what the core values say. It's do we actually live by them and bring in people who live by them as well. And so I think those values and purpose are like the guardrails on the road. If you're driving towards a destination, that's the vision you're trying to get to for your business. The values and the purpose are your guardrails to make sure you don't drive off the road or off a cliff. And so I think by having that framework and then having intentionality in it, it starts to drive the behaviors. And we like to say that culture drives behavior, behavior drives results. And so if you're looking for results in your business, you got to have a culture that's performance-based, yes, and it's got to have a value system that passionate about and excited about and loyal about. And so, you always learn in school who, what, when, where, and why. I think it's why, where, who. So why is why do we exist? That's our purpose. Where is where we're going? That's our vision. Who is our core values, the type of people that we want to have in the organization. And then you've got the what and the how. And the what and the how is the systems and the process and the execution. And so I think, a lot of business, obviously they're all critical for a successful business. You got to be able to execute have a sound strategy and tactics and execute and systems. But I think without a framework and a foundation of purpose and values, you can lose loyalty. And the minute things get difficult, like we talked about in the economy, or you're not hitting the numbers, people are going to bail out quicker. You as the founder may feel less passion for what you're doing every day because it's hard. And so I think that's a critical component of building a culture. The one lesson I will say that we learned later on is culture doesn't work if it does not include what I say performance-based accountability. Because if it's all just warm and nice sounding, fuzzy sounding values, you're creating what we like to say, too much Sesame Street, not enough Wall Street. But if you've got too much Wall Street, not enough Sesame Street, then you've got a backstabbing boiler room and nobody really is, passionate about what they're doing. They're just in it for the money. So I think you got to have this right balance where people like to be held accountable. They want to win. They want to get results, but they also want to have a sense of belonging, purpose, and value of what they're doing every day.
Man, you should write a book on this one. I mean, because I try to help companies to form their cultures and make it unique and vibrant, and make sure that the balance, especially you talked about, because you can have a team, an organization, which could be at point A where they are happy and they are in Sesame Street, but if they're not performing, unless they balance performance with engagement and happiness, the company doesn't exist. And that's the struggle for a lot of leaders, because they may just focus on the Sesame Street. They forget about the Wall Street, or they focus on the Wall Street, drive people to achieve performance, and there is no engagement, there is no culture, there is no purpose. They burn out.
It's a critical balance. Go ahead.
Yeah. I love it. I mean, if I know this is not the theme we're gonna talk, maybe I want to bring you back, focusing on this one, because I agree with you. Culture makes or breaks. If you think about these great companies, they may have so many competitive advantages, but if you think about the culture, even in bad times, like you said, in bad times, even when the economy is tanking, if the culture is great, people don't go somewhere to get some perks, some raise. No. They stick and they stay with that company. And that's the greatest competitive advantage you want to have. And in your case, you have the chemistry, because you have purpose and values as, framework and pillars, and you build on that behaviors. And sometimes, companies, they have culture is autopilot. They don't connect the purpose with values and so on. From your experience, if you have to give 3 things for people right now, entrepreneurs who are struggling to have a culture which aligns with purpose and values, and also a culture that sticks and deliver results, what would you advise them from your experience?
Number one, it does not happen overnight. Repetition, repetition, repetition. We actually do a daily huddle every day at our company, both at the franchise level as well as at our headquarters. And we review one of our core values every single day. So it becomes ingrained in the DNA of everybody here. It's, again, not something we talked about once and then put it back in the training manual. It's brought up, celebrated, and refreshed regularly. So that's, I think, the most critical piece of it is to make sure that it's reinforced regularly. Number two, culture is everybody in the organization's responsibility. I don't think it's just upon the owner or the HR leader or one or two advocates to be in charge of the culture. I think the culture belongs to everybody in the organization, which means you can't sit in an organization and say you don't like the culture because you're part of that. What are you doing to elevate and improve and develop? Now, it does start at the top. It starts with the founder's vision and values and purpose and making very clear definition of what those pillars are. And it relies on the founder to reinforce it regularly, especially early on. But it's upon everybody in the organization to grab a hold of those and to champion those as well. And then, number three is I think kind of reiterating what I said about having the right balance, understanding that accountability is part of winning, but accountability is also part of being a leader and getting better and helping other people get better. And so if your purpose, I would imagine, has something to do with making a positive impact in some form or fashion, otherwise, why does your product or service is here to help somebody with whatever solution it offers. And so why would you not want to be held accountable to doing a better job at that or to hitting your numbers? And we always like to say, be cold on the numbers don't lie, but be warm on the people. And that's how you create that balance.
I love the balance you are creating. And one thing you mentioned I want to highlight is even if culture should be driven and initiated by the top leadership, it should be owned by everybody. And sometimes I see the top leadership not aligning with the culture, setting bad example, and that doesn't work. Or you see overdriven top leadership just driving everything, expecting people to follow. But if you give ownership to everyone involved, that sticks and everybody owns it.
We made a mistake actually early on. We actually hired somebody to be head of HR, and we referred to her as head of HR and culture. And that was a huge mistake because everybody, as she went, so did the culture. If she was having a good day, everybody was happy. If she was having a bad day, everybody was upset.
Going down.
Culture can't belong to somebody's title. Culture can't, in my opinion, shouldn't even belong to a committee. The culture is all of ours collectively, and it's based on the values. The behaviors are going to be ones that support the values. So in order to create this quote unquote culture, we've got to be behaving in ways that align with these values and these results.
Yeah, definitely. So I know some companies, they have cultural ambassadors, they have ad hoc committee and so on. Unless they are very careful, they may experience what you experience. But if they want to have the leadership like cultural ambassadors, they have to make sure that it's not attached to those personalities and so on.
Those individuals, right?
For them to make research, maybe to see where the culture is stumbling, or maybe if there is a need to reform the culture, or if there is disagreement based on the culture, the cultural values, maybe they will take responsibility to bring these things into the surface to the leadership. Otherwise, if they are the actual emblem and the actual representation of the culture, you're right, it's very dangerous. I'm glad that you brought that up. We have maybe 10 minutes or less, so I want to talk about the spotlight. You appeared on Shark Tank and also on Oprah, Undercover Boss, and so on. Can you tell us about what it feels like to be in the spotlight? In your case, you have results. At the same time, you have the ability to connect right now here in this podcast and also on those major platforms. And a lot of entrepreneurs struggle. they don't have presence, they don't have authority because they are not spotlighting themselves. It's very scary to appear, especially on those major platforms. Tell us the process, the evolution, you starting to spotlight yourself and your company
Yeah.
to major media.
I would say we kind of stumbled into it, and then it kind of evolved and snowballed to a degree. Uh, I recognized the power of PR when we had one truck in Washington, D.C., and we had just started the business. And a reporter from the Washington Post had seen one of our trucks. She called. She wanted to do a story about it because she thought the name was funny. It got published in Washington Post, the actual print newspaper, and people would call and had a need for the service, and we'd come over to their house and they'd have the article ripped out. And again, this was kind of pre-social media sharing and everything like that. But it stuck in the back of my mind, like, okay, we're a consumer brand. We're not really business to business. Yes, we do commercial business, but we're more of a consumer-facing brand. So we got to be in the consumers' faces, and we didn't have a big ad budget. So we did things like grassroots marketing. Anytime there was a media story or media opportunity, we jumped on it. And I would say, swallowed my insecurity very early. I realized, because people would sometimes cast, some negative comments like, oh, you're going to be shamelessly promoting, or it's, publicity is, publicity chasers, things like that. And I was like, you know what? We're starting a business. We want to make this business as big as it can get. We want to promote the heck out of it. If I'm the founder and I'm not proud and confident to, walk around with this silly name on my chest of a company and, walk into a networking room or go on television and talk about it, then how's the business going to grow? Or how can I expect anybody else to do it also? And so, our big break was obviously Shark Tank, episode 1, season 1. We've done some other reality TV shows since then. And I think every time it's just a matter of stretching our comfort zone, being willing to take a risk, put ourselves out there. Same thing with speaking on stage. I mean, my voice used to quiver and I would shake when I would speak on stage because I'd be so nervous. And I think just through repetition, I got desensitized to the fear and the anxiety that comes with it. And, even just standing up in front of my employees in the early days. I mean, even sometimes today, I still get nervous standing up in front of a group of employees and so, or insecure. And so I think as a founder, you got to sort of put your brave hat on, your brave jersey on and say, I'm starting this thing for a reason, for my family, for myself, for my community, for my employees. And I've got to be the champion, the brand champion for what I'm doing. And then ultimately, hopefully inspire other people to help champion as well.
I'm glad you brought about the mindset part. Me personally, the way I grew up and the way I was told, don't trumpet your own trumpet and don't advertise yourself and so on. Sometimes the way you grew up or the subculture limits you from speaking up about what you believe in, also what you stand for. But as you said, if your company is starved of attention, especially now, we don't even have social media. We have attention media. And if you're not in front of people's face, and if you're not at the top of their mind, you're out of the game. Because what changed in my mind and for me to promote what I do and to stand up to the belief that I have is when I realized that if I believe in what I know, if I believe in my product and services, and if I know that other people going to benefit, if I don't speak up, if I don't promote them, it's a disservice to the people I am called to serve, the people that I want to help and support. And therefore, I thought this is not about me. This is actually about the people, the customers that I serve. That switched in my head. And after that, I'm kind of shameless. And some people think, oh, he's egotistical. Oh, he's trying to, egotistical, trying to be selfish and promote. But for me, hey, I believe in something. If I don't have a quality thing, if I don't believe in what I do and the product services I have, I won't come out to promote them. But if I believe in them, I have to be shameless to promote. I want to ask you a couple of questions because you've been in both states. One, public speaking, it requires some skill sets, and also media, it requires kind of different skill sets. Would you please compare how you succeeded in both?
Yes, I would say I did go to some public speaking trainings. I actually did the Dale Carnegie public speaking training, which I highly recommend something like that. It was like a 2-day workshop and some follow up, just because, it's like learning a new sport. Some people are very natural when the first time they go out on the golf course or first time they go out and shoot a basketball, and some people are very awkward and uncomfortable. And I'm probably more in the awkward, uncomfortable camp as it relates to sports and as it relates to public speaking. And so I think, if you wanted to learn a new sport, you would go out, you'd get a coach, or you'd watch videos online, you'd read some books, but you can't just become good at the sport by reading a book. You've got to practice and you've got to go through repetition. And so I think the same holds true with public speaking. The only way you can get better at that is through repetition and through coaching and watching yourself, working on making improvements. Are you pacing around? Are you saying and too much, which I do way too often in the interviews, by the way. And so I think things like that are going to be very useful and impactful as training and practice and coaching. The media also, the difference with the media is you kind of have to be a little bit quick on your feet with your responses, and you got to be shorter and more brief with your responses, because the media only has, as you said, the attention span, 7 to 15 second clip that they can utilize in a news interview or a quote. And so again, that probably took some practice and repetition, but that one I probably came a little bit more natural than standing on stage and speaking, which I did need to get some support and coaching on.
Yeah, thank you. 3 things you said. One, go out and get some courses. That's what I encourage people. Just it worth the amount of time. Second, record yourself and watch. A lot of people don't want to hear their voice and watch themselves, but that's how you increase your awareness. That's how you see where your blind spots. And the third one, go out, practice. And I like also the differentiations you made between public speaking and media interview, because in media, you don't have a lot of time. You have to think based on punchlines, and you have to be precise. And also you have to bridge. Sometimes they may take you somewhere, but you want to highlight, let's say, your mission or your company, and you have to know how to bridge them, focus on your agenda for that interview and so on. And I'm glad that you invested on that. And I want people to realize that you succeeded not by chance. You invested on yourself and you practice and you learn. Before we close this, do you have anything last minute insight or any suggestions, or where can people find you?
Yeah, so they can find me pretty easily. I have a website, nickfriedman.com. You can also find me, Nick Friedman, the number 1, on Instagram and X. And I think you find me on LinkedIn as well. It'll be under College H.U.N.K.S, Hauling Junk, Nick Friedman. Connect with me if you want to learn more about franchising or anything else. As far as insights, really, I always champion, have people, if they're in business, need to wake up every day with a level of gratitude, but also urgency that we've got work to do today. But don't get discouraged that the results don't come today. Micro effort compounds that create macro results. And so I always like to preach urgency of effort, patience of results, because if you've got a long-term vision and a destination you're trying to get to, you're trying to climb a big mountain like we were when we got started. Very rarely does it truly happen overnight, although some people will look at it and claim that it was an overnight success, but it's all relative, because when you're in it in the day-to-day, it can feel like it's taking forever.
Thank you very much, Nick. These are really great insights, and the stories that you shared. I want to thank you on behalf of my audience. Everyone, thank you for watching. And if you have any suggestions or if you have any questions, please reach out, like, comment, and share this great story and interview. Until I see you again with another interview, have a great day. Thank you.